All right, so day number 24 is now in the books, and it's a little bit of a winner. It's not one that I'm super proud of. I'm actually making this recap on Saturday because yesterday morning I got pulled away from my PC. But yesterday I finished up with a small green day, which actually does beat my target for yesterday, which was just don't lose. And as you can see, I did finish with a small green result of about 0.5%. And you can also see that there were, commissions ate up more than 60% of my profit. And that's a large part of why I closed this day. I was considering taking other trades. However, I got that phone call right as I was thinking, maybe I should lock it up for the day. And so that sealed the deal. And I thought, yes, now I don't have the option of continuing to trade, which made me happy because I wasn't super proud with my performance yesterday morning. So what I'm going to do with this recap is not open any of the charts. I'm just going to go through my trades on my trade log, explain them briefly, and then shut her down. Because this weekend is a long weekend, and that gives me the opportunity to work on a lot of the support material that I've been struggling with. And I really want to get a lot of that stuff done, so I don't want to spend any time whatsoever more than necessary on this recap. So here we are in my trade log looking at the 4 trades from today. I'll scroll over a little bit so you can see. And a lot of things went wrong here. The very first trade was not the greatest start to the morning. You can see I opened this trade on ENG at 8:16 and 58 seconds, and I had only woken up at I think 7:55. And this was the first morning in quite a while where I actually required my alarm in order to wake up. This whole week I've been beating my alarm by 25 or 30 minutes. And on Friday, I did not wake up naturally. I had to wait for my alarm. And, that signifies maybe not ideal rest. And I didn't complete my pre-market checklist before I got involved in this trade. So that's already a lack of discipline showing. And what happened on this one was I took a 500 share starter at an amazing risk level. I got in at 151, risking 150. And, assuming that I would wait for the break of 150, I'm risking 2 cents on this trade. And so I figured that if this thing fails, if it doesn't break the levels that I want it to, I'm probably still going to book 10 cents. And 10 cents is still a 5-to-1 profit loss ratio. And so I really liked my plan going in. However, I got a little bit fooled by the tape, and I ended up I added 250 shares at 160, which ended up being pretty close to the top. And pretty much as soon as I took that add-on, I regretted it. And now in retrospect, I still regret it. I do think it was the incorrect play. I think probably the safe bet would have just been to take that 10 cents and complete the pre-market checklist. However, I didn't do that, and I ended up actually getting a pretty good fill on my first exit, which was at 161, and then I stopped out of the rest, coming back down at 152 to give me an average of 156.5. Actually, maybe it wasn't 152. I don't think that makes sense here, but anyway, moving on. So you can see my next trade was on DERM, which was the one I thought had the highest potential out of my whole watch list, and my watch list wasn't all that strong, but DERM to me looked like a high potential setup. It was consolidating sideways, and this entry here was an anticipatory break of the pre-market high. You can see I got in at 907 with only 125 shares. This was, I was looking for a pretty big move on this, and this was just my starter that I had intended to add to later. And it never got there, and I stopped out at $9, which was my hard stop. I didn't wait for the break of $9 because of the amount of selling pressure that I saw coming in on the tape and the lack of support that I saw in the level 2. So I just bailed at $9, and sure enough, I was right on this one. Sometimes I don't like when I do this, but in this case, it worked out great because it did break $9 and retraced a huge part of its move. So I took a small loss there and was still moderately green. I think I had like $10 of P&L on the day at this time. Now, next up was a scalp on DERM coming right out of the bell. You can see that in the first minute of the day, I got involved with 250 shares entering at 885 and selling following the break of $9, which was a little bit weak. I saw that we were kind of looking as if we were going to double top in the low 9s, and I didn't want to risk coming back down because this thing was really choppy. The way it was trading was not really ideal. And even though I did think it had potential, I decided to just cut it loose and take the profit and then, look for other things and kind of not trade so much because you can see I was splashing around a little bit and I didn't really like that. And so I decided to just take the profit, play it safe, don't look for home runs, and that's what I did. And I booked 18 cents after commissions, which I was okay with at this point. Now, NAAB was one that I've been watching since pretty early pre-market. I think around 9 o'clock I noticed it. It hit my low of day hit list a lot of times. It was basically filled the low side of my hit list, which you can see in other videos. I'm not going to open my broker screen today, but you can see it in past videos. And it was just just nothing but NAAB. And this one was a bad news reversal. It had gapped all the way down from $30 something dollars to the $10 range. And in the first candle of its resumption, it was halted on news. And when it resumed, it squeezed from $10 to $14 on one candle. And to me, that solidified the possibility that this could be a good candidate for a bottom bounce. And so what I was looking for coming in here at 1055 was an anticipatory entry of probably a higher move. It could have turned out to just be a scalp in a worst case scenario. And I was risking off $10. And this is a tragic trade because I got fooled, basically. I misread the tape. I misread the whole situation, and I stopped out exactly at $10. And what ended up happening on this one was that it bounced 6 times off the $10 level before finally squeezing, and it eventually reached the low 11s, I believe. But I missed all of that, and I missed all of that because I was just a little bit too quick on the hotkey. There was a hidden buyer, which I didn't give myself the chance to notice. As soon as I saw it breaking down towards 10, I had my finger over the bail key, and once I saw shares disappear at 10, I hit that key. And as it turned out, there was a hidden buyer, which brought it back up. And although it did consolidate for quite a long time, I would have been able to hold this safely if I had just had the presence of mind to read the tape properly and to notice that there was a hidden buyer, which I did not. And so I booked a $30 loss on this, and it kind of bothered me a little bit because, later on it ran up, and I missed the move. I mean, I could have made not that much. On this trade, I was actually thinking about averaging down. This entry at 1055 was a high of day break play. And looking back, I think the best play on this would have actually been to buy against support, which is not something I normally do. But in this case, I could have tapered my risk so far down that I could have exited even at the beginning of its rip up and still made an amazing profit loss ratio, even if I went with small size. And you can see I only took 50 shares, and that's because of the distance from my entry to my stop. The risk setup was a lot less than ideal, and so I managed that by lowering my share size. And I think that was wrong. I think what I really should have done was see how it reacted to the $10 level, and then if I had done that, I would have given myself the chance to notice the 6 bottoms at $10. And then maybe I could have taken 250 shares, which is pretty heavy for this price range. And if I had done that, I honestly think I would have probably added another 125 once the breakout started, which was around 1030. So I could have potentially had a 375 share position, which I wrote up. I probably would have sold the first half pretty quickly, but I probably would have got an average of about 15 or 20 cents on that position, which would have been a great result and would have made up for the other kind of questionable results that I had got earlier in the day. So that's pretty much it for this recap, guys. And the closing note I think I'll leave with is that my decision to close this day was one that I think was based on really bad reasoning. And that was because I wanted to preserve my pattern of not having 2 losing days in a row. If I scroll up, you can see there are 0 instances of where I had a loss and then I had another loss. And in this case, especially, coming off that huge slippage day on Thursday, I really didn't want to, like I said on Thursday, go into the weekend with 2 losses. And so when I saw myself failing to book a substantial amount of green on all these trades, I thought, I have a green P&L, maybe I should close so that I preserve that pattern. And that is not the right kind of thinking. That's very results oriented. That's being way too much of a stats whore, so to speak, in my opinion, where, I'm trying to make good stats, but it shouldn't be about that. It should be about trying to make good decisions and letting the stats follow. And even though I do think I should have closed this day, I think the reasoning should have been more, well, look at, the middling results that you're receiving on this trades. Look how much you're splashing around and falling into, bad habits. And as I mentioned a couple of times before, I'm somebody who always wants to be stimulated mentally. And this really, trading the way I want to and trading the way I should are two very different things. The way I want to is I want to always be involved in the action. I want to be getting stimulated all the time and having challenges coming at me all the time. And although I could do that with a higher balance, this is nowhere near the balance that would allow me to do that. The impact of commissions, if I were to try to do that, is going to be way too high, and I'm going to find myself with the same kind of result that has led me to go back into this simulator. And that's something that I definitely want to avoid. So I'm just going to cut this week off and go into the weekend, work on some material. Hopefully that'll have a positive emotional and mental effect. And then I can come back on Tuesday with a better attitude and 3 days of, clean slate. Even though I don't really like weekends these days because I really like to trade, I think it's important following significant losses such as this one to have a cool off period. And that's what this weekend is going to be for me. And so that's why I'm going to cut this recap short here and work on some support material that I will hopefully be able to release to you guys before Monday.